Welcome to my YouTube channel, Nady the Coder. Today we're going to be talking about the class components in reactjs. Before diving into the lecture, please make sure you watch the previous lectures on reactjs in order to follow along. Let's just dive into the lecture. So as we are running the reactjs application from the previous lecture, we can also open it in the code, VS Code. And it will open the project and VS Code for me. And you have seen that we were dealing with the functional component over here. And so it's basically just a simple function and it is a certain name, and then we're returning some JSX from here. Or reactjs gives us a flexibility to also make use of classes instead of just a function component. And in order to do that, or in order to make use of classes in reactjs, we can simply do or import component from here, and instead of writing the function over here like this, we can just do class and we can call it name, and then it will extend the component itself. And instead of the return function, or we can wrap the return function into a method of this class that is called render. So we can simply do render over here and it will return some JSX for us. So yeah, you can see we're here, and we'll get rid of this for now, and we will hardcode this message for now as well. We'll type in something like hello from class component. When I save the file, so you can see that we are seeing this hello from class component message. So this is basically how we can make use of the classes and reactjs. Reactjs classes also gives us the flexibility to have a state of the component. So what is basically a state? So a state is basically a JavaScript object that we define inside the component, which defines the state of the component. So in order to make use of the state, we can simply do constructor. We can call the constructor function over here, and then we have to do this super. So basically it calls the constructor on the class component, and over here we have to define our state. So by calling this constructor, React gives us access to the state, that is the default one, and we cannot make use of anything else, but we just specifically or strictly have to follow this naming convention. So we have to make use of state, and we can define any properties that we want over here. So for instance, let's say we name it John. We have a property over here in the state, we call it John, and if we want to make use of the state within our component, then we can simply get rid of this, and we have to do the curly braces. And within the curly braces, we have to access the state like this. So this dot state dot name. You can see the list of the properties that we have access to. For now, we just have one property that's called name. So we can just click this, and I'll save this, and you can see hello from John. So this is how we can manage the state basically in our class components. Now, in order to modify the state, for example, we have a button over here, and we have to, for example, name it modify name. So in reactjs, you cannot have two elements like this, so it must have a parent that enwraps these two child components. For now, we will just make use of dev element, but we can also use something that's called React fragments. Just keep in mind that if you have some elements like this and it doesn't have any parent, then you have to unwrap the children within a parent component or element. Let's just save this file. You'll see a button over here. So what I want is, for example, I want to click this button, modify name over here. It should modify the name to something else. So basically, as you have seen that we are keeping the name and the state of this component. So on click, I want to modify this state. So on click, I can define the on click over here like this. So you can see that this is a little bit different than the way we define on click on a normal HTML element. We are using the camel case naming convention over here, and we have to now update the state. So for that, in order to update a state, we can simply do this dot sit state through this sit state. So in here we want to modify the name, actually the name property of the state. So we can simply do this by name, and we can put it something else in here. Let's say just make it more clear. We just want to pass Anna to this. So what happens here when I click this button, so this will, through this function or through this method, the sit state will set the name property to Anna, and this will be overwritten. But in order to call this sit state method, we have to do this first, and through this method or through this handle we will call or set the state of this component. I'll save the file. The page is already reloaded, and when I click this modify name, it will change to Anna. So let's see. You can see the state of this component is modified. So this is how we modify the state or update the state of a component in the class component. So this is really awesome because it gives us a lot of control over the component, and we can modify the state of the component through this method, and it's more flexible. So this is basically the basic way of defining our class components. So this is all about the class component for now, and I'll see you in the next lecture.